world population continues to increase year after year, especially in China, measures to limit births were adopted by government authorities from the late 1970s. In September 1980, the Central Committee of the Communist Party advocates the average of one child per couple in order to accelerate the process of transformation, leading China to become a modern and rich global power. A failure to comply to the law would lead to huge financial and administrative penalties for the couple. The one-child policy has had numerous consequences which were the subject of many criticisms, such as unregistered children, late abortions, but especially infanticide of girls, particularly in rural areas. The policy also resulted in an imbalance between the male population and female population in China. However, an official of the State Commission for Population and Family Planning estimated in 2006 that the policy had prevented the birth of 400 million babies over the past 30 years. He said, "The objective of ensuring the Chinese people a relatively comfortable life would not have been possible if we had 400 million more people."
Until the 1960s, Chinese couples had the freedom to choose the size of their family. Under the lead of Mao Zedong, couples were encouraged to have big families because he believed that a huge population made the country stronger. However, considering that families were getting bigger and bigger, Chinese officials started to worry about the population growth and then started to encourage couples to get married later and have only 2 children. However, this policy was not mandated by law because of Mao's beliefs. In 1979, after Mao's death in 1976, Deng Xiaoping introduced the one-child policy as an official attempt to control the Chinese population. The policy was adopted by their government with the aim of containing China's population below 1,200,000,000 residents. Furthermore, the Chinese government was also hoping to address some of the social, economic, and environmental problems that were caused by the important population growth of the past few decades. Between 1949 and 1976, the Chinese population went from 540 billion to 940 billion. The one-child policy restricted couples who lived in an urban area to have only one child. If that pregnancy resulted in twins, then 2 children were accepted. Couples living in rural area were not concerned by that policy, which means that about 1/3 of China's population was subject to the one-child restriction. 8 years after the establishment of the policy, only 35 million women have respected the law to have only one child, a number that greatly offended national leaders. Citizens of China have the obligation to practice family planning according to the law, and both husband and wife are responsible for family planning. On December 29, 2001, the 25th meeting of the Standing Committee of the 9th National People's Congress of the People's Republic of China was held, and they adopted the Population and Family Planning Law of the People's Republic of China. In the Chapter 3, Regulation of Reproduction, Article 18 of this law, it is said, "The state maintains its current policy for reproduction, encouraging late marriage and childbearing and advocating one child per couple. Where the requirements specified by law and regulation are met, plans for a second child, if requested, may be made." Even though the population had acquired the right to have a second child, the government still strongly encouraged couples to have only one child. In Chapter 3, it is also stated that family planning should be respected by means of contraception and that couples of reproductive age had to adopt contraceptive method in addition to accept guidance for family planning. These rules were meant to prevent and reduce the incidence of unwanted pregnancies. The funds needed to pay for those contraceptive methods had to be listed in the budget of couples that used them or were guaranteed by their social insurance plans. In Chapter 4 of the law, rewards and social security are discussed. As mentioned previously, couples that practiced family planning were rewarded. Indeed, for those respecting the law, basic old age insurance, basic medical insurance, childbearing insurance, and welfare benefits were improved. Also, the state encouraged insurance companies to offer schemes that facilitated family planning. Couples who volunteered to have only one child in their lifetime were given a certificate of honor for single-child parents. With that certificate, the couples could enjoy important rewards. Citizens were also encouraged to marry late and delay childbearing, and those who did so were entitled to longer nuptial and maternity leaves or other welfare benefits. In order to support the mothers, women received assistance and subsidies during the pregnancy, the delivery, and the breastfeeding period. People with lower income were also encouraged to respect the policy. To help rural households that practice family planning, the government gave them support and preferential treatments in terms of funds, technology, and training. Poor households that practice family planning were given priorities in terms of poverty alleviation loans, relief through work and other poverty alleviation projects, and social assistance. In Chapter 5, technical services for family planning are discussed. It is stated in the Article 30 that the state establishes premarital healthcare and maternal healthcare systems to prevent or reduce the incidence of birth defects and improve the health of newborns. Also, the government had the responsibility to ensure citizens' access to services for family planning in order to improve their reproductive health. The people who are responsible for providing family planning technical services, such as doctors, nurses, counselors, etc., had to give guidance to citizens in choosing the safe, effective, and appropriate contraceptive methods. They also had to strongly encourage couples that already had a child to choose long-acting contraceptive methods. Finally, the use of technologies such as ultrasonography to identify fetal gender for non-medical purposes is strictly prohibited, so is sex-selective pregnancy termination. In Chapter 6, the legal liability is addressed. Anyone who provides family planning technical services and commits one of the following acts had to make rectification and was given a disciplinary warning, in addition to have his unlawful gains confiscated. Number 1. Illegally performing an operation related to family planning on another person. Number 2. Using ultrasonography or other techniques to identify fetal gender for non-medical purposes or to bring about sex-selective pregnancy termination for non-medical purposes for another person. Or number 3. Performing a fake birth control, providing a false medical report, or issuing a counterfeit certificate of family planning. If the circumstances of such an act are serious, the person's license is revoked, and if a crime is constituted, he shall be investigated for criminal liability according with law. Anyone who forges, alters, or trades in certificate of family planning gets his unlawful gains confiscated and receive administrative sanctions in accordance to the law. Also, citizens who gave birth to babies not respecting the Article 18 of this law had to pay a social maintenance fee. If they failed to pay within the specified time limit, they had to pay an additional surcharge as stated in Article 41. If the person who failed to pay the fees prescribed in Article 31 was a state functionary, he was given an administrative sanction according to law, in addition to the surcharge.
Although the policy has had some benefits for China, such as the avoidance of 400 million births, a majority of people will say that it was not a success. Undeniably, China's one-child policy was abolished due to the numerous consequences it has generated. The imbalance between the male population and female population, the female infanticide, the 4-to-1 problem, which refers to the obligation of the child to take care of the elderly, the corruption within the society, the unregistered children are all major consequences engendered by the policy. In 2000, the sex ratio at birth was estimated at 116.9 boys for 100 girls. This disequilibrium was expected to ensue in between 30 and 40 million Chinese men finding themselves without a wife in 2020. Moreover, the one-child policy led to a situation in China where there is not enough young people to support an aging population that is considerably growing as a result of the improvement of health services and technologies. Studies predicted that more than 1/4 of China's population will be over 65 years old by the mid-century. This has been known as the 4-to-1 problem. It is the little emperors, that is to say, children who do not have siblings to help support the family, will have to learn how to handle this situation. According to social psychologists, these numerous Chinese children who end up as the only child in the family are not socialized correctly in society. Indeed, these children, called Chinese singletons, were accused of being neglecting, lacking discipline, and having no capacity to adapt. China's one-child policy also resulted in an unknown number of hidden children by Chinese families by fear of reprisals. Without a birth certificate or identity papers, these children are considered unregistered and are therefore deprived of schooling, medical care, or legal employment. Most official studies based on the 2010 census report 13 million hidden children. Finally, the one-child policy adopted in China in the late 1970s was frowned upon the world's eyes as it was contested for violating the human rights of having the freedom to choose the size of one's family. In conclusion, China announced in October 2015 the end of the controversial one-child policy, dating back over 3 decades. China's government also announced the authorization for all Chinese to have 2 children, a historic turning point claimed by demographers and economists to deal with an aging population and needs growth. This decision has been made in order to promote a balance in the demographic development of China and also in order to respond to the aging of the population, according to a statement from the Chinese Communist Party read on state television CCTV.